Nyasa News.
Mai koma tukumalawi kuno kuchitika zopya. Kafukufuku yuyu wa ndege wakamata akuluakulu. Tiona zinthu zoti sitinazionepo iya. Ndithu ena ake aona nazo mavuto akulu oti sizidachitikepo mu mbiri ya dziko lino. Inu mpaka na nkhani imene iyi yafika pamene papa. Taona ndithu. Tamvani zimene akunena munthu amene. Tangodzimverani nokha zimene akunena munthu amene.
I, Gift Chancellor Dula, Secretary for Defense,
do solemnly
swear
by the Almighty God
by the Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence that I shall give
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
Nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, Honorable Minister and the Principal Secretary. You having taken oath, you're now free to give your testimony. You may have brought a presentation. You can talk through a presentation, depending on what you're comfortable to do with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and the honorable members present. Indeed, I have a presentation, and I will speak to my presentation. So, first of all, I would like to appreciate the invitation that I received from this committee to appear so that the Minister of Defense, and indeed myself as Minister of Defense, I can provide some information to this committee to assist in the work that this committee is undertaking. I have a presentation, copies of which have also been shared, and I'll be taking this honorable committee through the mandate of the Minister of Defense and the mandate of the Malawi Defense Force, the oversight roles and functions of the Minister of Defense over military assets vis-a-vis assets of the Malawi Defense Force, the policy frameworks that govern utilization of the military assets, authorization and accountability framework that also guide the utilization of military assets, of course zeroing in on military aircrafts, the standard operating procedures that we use at the Malawi Defense Force as well as at the Ministry of Defense, the interaction framework that is there between the civilian and military authorities, as well as the air safety and accident investigation procedures that are laid down to be followed by both the Ministry of Defense as well as the Malawi Defense Force. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, as such, what I've just shared will form the structure of my presentation, which I believe will respond to the issues that Honorable Chairperson you just raised in your introductory remarks. To start with, the mandate of the Minister of Defense. The Minister of Defense, you may wish to know that it was established in 1993 through a presidential decree, with responsibilities, amongst others, that include formulation and implementation of defense policies, provision of strategic oversight and civilian control of the Malawi Defense Force, managing defense resources and ensuring accountability in their utilization, advising government on matters relating to national defense and security, coordinating defense-related activities with other government ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as international partners. Honorable Chairperson and members, the Ministry exercises a civilian oversight over the Malawi Defense Force, while operational command and control of military assets remain vested in the commander of the Malawi Defense Force through the established military chain of command. Allow me, Honorable Chairperson, just to take again on this one as a matter of emphasis that whilst the Ministry of Defense exists, it is important to note that the civilian oversight that the Ministry of Defense exercises over the Malawi Defense Force vis-a-vis over the military operations of the Malawi Defense Force, the operational command and control of military assets is vested in the commander of the Malawi Defense Force, otherwise called the Chief of Defense Force, through established military chain of command. The mandate of the Malawi Defense Force, on the other hand, is derived from Chapter 16 of the Constitution of the Republic of Malawi. Chapter 16 of the Constitution of the Republic of Malawi, specifically Section 159, establishes the Malawi Defense Force as the only military force constituted in Malawi and regulated in accordance with the Constitution and other related pieces of legislation. Going further, within the same Constitution, Section 160 provides the constitutional position of the Malawi Defense Force, which is to operate at all times under the direction of civil authorities in whom the Constitution vests such powers, so as to uphold the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Republic of Malawi, to uphold and protect the constitutional order in the Republic of Malawi, provide technical expertise and resources to assist the civilian authorities in the maintenance of essential services in times of emergency, and perform such other duties outside the territory of Malawi as may be required by any treaty to which Malawi is a signatory in accordance with international prescriptions of international law. Honorable Chairperson and members, let it be known that no person or authority may direct or deploy the Malawi Defense Force to act in contravention of these constitutional provisions. No person or authority may direct or deploy the Malawi Defense Force to act in contravention of these constitutional provisions. Section 161 of the Constitution of Malawi provides the responsibilities of the Malawi Defense Force, with the ultimate responsibility of the Malawi Defense Force vesting in the President of this Republic as Commander-in-Chief. The command of the Malawi Defense Force vests in the Commander of the Malawi Defense Force, which in short we just say the CDF. And this is provided for in Section 11 of the Defense Force Act. The Commander of the Defense Force, or the Chief of the Defense Force, is appointed by the President, but is accountable to the Minister of Defense in the day-to-day management of the Malawi Defense Force. This is in accordance with Section 161, subsection 2, and subsection 3 of the Constitution of Malawi. Powers of the President, as vested in the Constitution, are exercised on the recommendations of the Defense Council that is established under the Defense Force Act, Act number 24 of 2023. Honorable Chairperson and members, the Defense Force Act provides for the function operations of the Malawi Defense Force. The Malawi Defense Force, as you rightly pointed out, Honorable Chairperson, consists of 4 services, namely the Army, Air Force, Maritime Force, or otherwise called the Navy, and the National Service. This is again in accordance with Section 4, subsection 1 of the Defense Force Act. The Defense Council that is established is responsible for the superintendents, where in this case, superintendents, we are talking about supervision, control, and management, and also administration of the Malawi Defense Force. This is in accordance with Section 5, subsection 1 of the Defense Force Act. Section 5, subsection 2 of the same Act provides that the Defense Council shall consist of the Minister of Defense as the chairperson, the High Command of the Malawi Defense Force, and the High Command of the Malawi Defense Force includes the Commander, the Deputy Commander, and the Chief of Staff. And the Secretary to the President and Cabinet, otherwise called the Chief Secretary to the Government, the Solicitor General, Service Commanders, the 4 services that I mentioned, that's the Commander of the Army, Commander of the Navy, Commander of the Malawi National Service, and Commander of the Air Force. They also form part of the Defense Council. And also the Chief of Legal Services in the Malawi Defense Force, as well as the Principal Secretary of the Ministry of Defense as Secretary of the Defense Council. The Defense Council, Honorable Chairperson and members, has powers to determine the operational use of the Malawi Defense Force, appoint and remove senior officers and other members of the Malawi Defense Force. This is in accordance to sections 161, subsection 4 of the Constitution, as well as whilst powers that are exercised under this Constitution, they are exercised under the scrutiny of the Defense and Security Committee of the National Assembly. The defense, as a matter of fact, the Constitution under section 162 establishes this committee. The Defense Force Act, section 6, outlines further the responsibilities of the Defense Council, which include formulation and monitoring of the implementation of the National Defense Policy, reviewing and receiving and acting on reports submitted to the Council by the Minister of Defense, as well as the Chief of Defense Force, advising and making recommendations to the Commander-in-Chief vis-à-vis the President on any matters relating to or affecting the Malawi Defense Force, overseeing the deployment and operations of the Malawi Defense Force in accordance with the Defense Force Act as well as the Constitution, making rules and regulations for the Malawi Defense Force, and indeed carrying out any other responsibilities that would be considered relevant for the operations of the Malawi Defense Force. With regard to oversight of military aviation assets, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members, the Ministry of Defense exercises oversight responsibility over the assets of the Malawi Defense Force through policy direction and strategic accountability mechanisms. The operational management of military aircrafts is undertaken by the Malawi Defense Force, again, as you rightly mentioned, Honorable Chairperson, through the Malawi Air Force and other designated military aviation structures whose responsibilities include aircraft operation and mission execution, air crew training and certification, aircraft maintenance and airworthiness management, flight safety management, compliance with military aviation regulations and procedures. The Ministry of Defense receives regular reports and briefings on the status, utilization, maintenance, and operational readiness of aviation assets to ensure accountability and effective resource management. Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members, the policies that govern utilization of military aviation include, as I mentioned earlier on, of course, the Constitution itself as the main law of the land, the Defense Force Act of 2023, standard aviation procedures in line with International Civil Aviation Organization, Malawi Defense Force standing orders and aviation regulations, flight safety regulations and procedures, and other applicable international aviation standards and protocols. The Malawi Defense Force aviation assets, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members, that utilized for national defense and security operations as would be expected, but they are also used for training and operational readiness activities for the Malawi Defense Force, emergency response and disaster relief operations. These would be national as perhaps in some cases would be determined and dictated by the Disaster Management Department. These aviation assets are also utilized for medical evacuation missions where this would be deemed necessary. The same are used for search and rescue operations, other official government duties, and of course, humanitarian and national interest missions. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, all flights are required to be properly authorized, planned, documented, and conducted in accordance with applicable operational and safety procedures. When we are talking about all these that I mentioned, like national defense, training, emergency response, medical evacuation, search and rescue, all these are supposed to be undertaken after being properly authorized, planned, documented, and of course conducted in accordance with applicable operational and safety procedures. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, with regard to authorization and accountability framework, usage of the Malawi Defense Force assets, particularly aircrafts, follows an established chain of authorization, or indeed chain of command. Depending on the nature of the mission or the activity, approval may be granted by designated military authorities. That's the chain of command. And the accountability framework includes mission authorization procedures, flight planning and risk assessment, air crew qualification requirements, aircraft management certification, post-flight reporting mechanisms, accident and incident reporting procedures. These measures are intended to promote safety, accountability, and operational effectiveness. Honorable Chairperson and members, the standard operating procedures for hiring Malawi Defense Force assets include formal request that is submitted to the Malawi Defense Force by the entity or institution that would be requiring these services, government, ministry, department or agency, or indeed a corporate organization. It can also be an individual. And such kind of request would indicate the purpose of the trip, the flight, justification for requiring military air transport and not any other transport, proposed itinerary, and the passengers that are expected to be on this trip. The Malawi Defense Force commander commands designated military authorities to execute the request based on availability of the asset and also the national need or the need that has been indicated in the request. The assets of the Malawi Defense Force can also be used for other commercial purposes. And in this case, the same requisitioning is supposed to happen. And where these are to be used for commercial purposes, then it is expected that a pro forma invoice or an invoice will be issued and the payment has got to be made for such kind of commercial purposes. The Malawi Defense Force has deployed some of its assets in carrying or delivering fertilizers, for example, delivering of examinations, public examinations administered by the Malawi National Examinations Board. And these usually would be cases and situations of delivering these items in very hard to reach areas because the Malawi Defense Force has got types of assets that would go to very hard to reach areas, be it vehicles as well as the aircrafts. The interaction of the Malawi Defense Force as well as the interaction of the Ministry of Defense with the civilian as well as military authorities, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, the Malawi Defense Force in this kind of arrangement serves as the principal interface between government and the Malawi Defense Force on defense matters. So the interaction between civilian and military authorities in aviation matters hinges on policy, coordination, emergency response, and state missions. When it comes to policy and strategic direction, Honorable Chairperson and members, government through the Ministry of Defense provides policy guidance, while the military executes operations within approved frameworks. In the matters of coordination, coordination is done with the civil aviation authorities. So the military operations are coordinated with relevant civil aviation authorities to ensure safe and orderly use of national airspace. And such coordination would include flight clearance, airspace management, flight information sharing, air traffic coordination, safety and management response arrangements. With regard to national emergency operations, the Malawi Defense Force assets are frequently used to support civilian authorities during disasters, humanitarian emergencies, medical evacuations, as I mentioned earlier on, and other national emergencies. VIP and state missions, the Malawi Defense Force assets are also utilized for official state functions and transport of government officials when duly authorized following the chain of command of the Malawi Defense Force and established structures as per the procedures. Honorable Chairperson and members, air safety and accident investigation procedures, again within the Malawi Defense Force, these follow appropriate procedures, and they are considered to be of very paramount importance. So in the event of an aircraft accident or serious incident, established procedures require that immediate reporting has got to be done through the military chain of command. As the reporting is being done, measures have got to be undertaken to ensure preservation of evidence so that when investigations are undertaken, there should be some evidence that can be relied upon. The procedures also require that technical and operational investigations have got to be undertaken, and that's why I mentioned that there is need for preservation of evidence. But such also require that there should be cooperation with relevant government agencies and specialized investigators as need arises. And of course, upon undertaking such investigations, implementation of any recommendations that can arise from the investigations. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, as Minister of Defense, we are very committed to ensuring that whenever such kind of investigations are undertaken, they have to remain to be transparent, accountable, as well as the recommendations that come out of such should ensure continuous improvement of aviation safety standards in the military operations. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, in conclusion, I would like to state that the Ministry of Defense exercises civilian oversight over the Malawi Defense Force, aviation assets, through policy formulation, as I mentioned earlier on, strategic guidance, resource management and accountability mechanisms. Operational responsibility for the Malawi Defense Force aircrafts, of course, remains under the Malawi Defense Force command structure, as I mentioned earlier on, and as established by the relevant pieces of legislation. The utilization of military aviation assets, again, is governed by the constitution provisions, legislations, statutory requirements, military regulations, and applicable aviation safety procedures. And there is effective coordination between civilian authorities and military institutions, which remains essential in ensuring that there is safety, efficiency, accountability in our aviation operations to ensure and deliver national interest. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, again, I wish to reiterate that the Ministry of Defense is committed to cooperating with this ad hoc committee in ensuring that the investigations and the inquiry that you undertaken, as Minister of Defense, we are available to provide any additional information that may assist this committee to discharge its mandate. I thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, for your kind attention.
Honorable Minister, we appreciate the time and effort made to prepare this presentation. well presented. Members may have follow-up questions. Maybe they want to seek clarifications. I'll open the floor to members to engage with you. Starting with Zomba Tondwe, Dedza Mayani later.
Thank you so much, Chair. And thank you, Honourable Minister of Defence, for an elaborate presentation. Just points of clarification. You mentioned that on operational matters, the Chief of the Defence Force reports to the Ministry of Defence. I'm asking that because earlier on we got information that the Army Command, the Chief of the Defence Force, reports to some specific officers. So I wanted you to confirm that the Chief of the Defence Force reports to the Minister of Defence through the Secretary of Defence and not the Minister of Defence. It's, I want you to confirm if it's through the Secretary and not the Minister. And two, I wanted you to also confirm, just a moment. Yeah, so you said the Secretary of the Minister of Defence is also a Secretary of the Defence Council. I'm sure it's to safeguard the interests of the operation aspect so that he gets, the Ministry gets direct information in the Defence Council. That's my assumption. Maybe just confirm that for now. I can't see my other question, Chair. I may come back later. I had 3 questions, but I think I'm just seeing one. So my request is to ask the Honourable Minister if he can confirm that reporting lines from the commander of the Malawi Defence Force is through the Secretary of Defence and not the Minister. Thank you.
There's Mayani.
Chair, thank you very much for giving an opportunity to people of the Mayani to ask him, the Minister. Chair, would you please allow me to engage the Minister on a few questions?
Yes, how many questions have you got?
About 4, Chair.
About 4. Okay,
Yeah.
so after your questions, then I'll ask the Minister to respond before taking more questions. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair, for your guidance. Minister of Defence, I really appreciate your presentation. And I just wanted also to declare that as members of the public or as a civilian, we were beneficiaries of the civilian or public activities that are offered by the Malawi Defence Force during the last season of delivery of the fertilizer, the subsidized fertilizer. My area has challenges with transport, so we benefited much by use by your vehicles, the Malawi Defence Force vehicles. Without them, my people couldn't have benefited. So we are beneficiaries of the civilian activities offered by the Malawi Defence Force. Just to concur a bit with Zomba Tondwe, Chair, I just wanted to clearly understand the reporting lines or the way you are structured. Especially, I would like if you can draw a structure, placing in your narrative, in your reply, placing where the PS is, the MDF commander is, and then you connect with the minister and also the commander-in-chief. Chair, I'm emphasizing on the point by Zomba Tondwe because if that line is not clear, then we might be finding ourselves in that. So this one, don't reply because you replied together with the Zomba Tondwe. But where I wanted us to engage, Honorable Minister, in your presentation, you have emphasized a lot on policies. Under the previous presenter, the former Principal Secretary of the Ministry of Defense highlighted that there is a draft policy, that's the defense policy. I would like you to confirm to this report, to this committee, if there is a defense policy which needs revision, or if there is no defense policy in operation currently. Because you have referred so much to policies, and I wanted you to confirm if the previous submission by the former principal secretary, which he said the defense policy is in a draft form, and I wanted you to confirm if indeed you are operating without a defense policy. That's my first one in our engagement. Thank you, Chair. I would like to get that, then I'll follow up with the other questions.
Minister, you may take those questions.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and I would like to thank Honorable Member from Zomba Tondwe and also Honorable Member from Zenizeni for the questions. From Honorable Member from Zomba Tondwe, the operational matters regarding day-to-day operations. I think I did allude to the fact that for the day-to-day management of the Malawi Defense Force, the commander, or rather the chief of the Defense Force, is accountable to the Minister of Defense. So, Honorable Chairperson, I would like the committee to understand that as provided for in the Constitution, Section 161, which clearly stipulates that the commander or the chief of the Defense Force is accountable to the Minister of Defense in the day-to-day management of the Malawi Defense Force. It's already provided for in the Constitution. Now, when we are talking about accountability, Honorable Chairperson, accountability can happen in so many other ways. But when we're talking about accountability, what it means is for anything that happens within the Malawi Defense Force, the chief of the Defense Force is answerable to the Minister of Defense, if I'm to use a different word. Otherwise, the Constitution uses the word accountable, meaning that the Chief of Defense Force would be answerable to the Minister of Defense for the day-to-day management of the Malawi Defense Force. Now, when we are talking about the day-to-day management of the Malawi Defense Force, reporting, I think there could be an event or an issue that has happened at the Malawi Defense Force. Perhaps the Minister is not in the office. That does not preclude the Chief of Defense Force to reach out to the Secretary for Defense. He can reach out to the Secretary for Defense to report on matters that have happened within the Malawi Defense Force. But that does not constitute being accountable. So what it means is the Chief of Defense Force is, as stipulated by the Constitution, accountable to the Minister of Defense for the day-to-day management of the Malawi Defense Force. So if I'm to relate that to the question from Zenizeni, again, if I'm to draw a structure with the commander in chief of the Malawi Defense Force, as I mentioned earlier on, that again, according to the Constitution, Section 161 again, ultimate responsibility of the Malawi Defense Force vests with the commander in chief. And I think, as the name suggests, the president is the commander in chief, meaning anything that happens again in the military, in the Malawi Defense Force, including the Minister of Defense, just like all the other structures of government, being the commander in chief, the president holds ultimate responsibility of the Malawi Defense Force. So if I was to draw a line as regards to how the reporting structures are happening within the Malawi Defense Force, and in relation to the Minister of Defense, again, the Constitution provides those reporting lines very, very clearly, and is supported by the Defense Force Act, particularly with the establishment of the Defense Council, which is another structure within which the Malawi Defense Force, as well as the Minister of Defense, reports to the Commander-in-Chief, because all resolutions of the Defense Council are reported back to the Commander-in-Chief vis-a-vis the President, meaning that the President is always abreast of what is going on within the Ministry of Defense, as well as within the Malawi Defense Force through the Defense Council. So, Honorable Chairperson and members, the Defense Council would be equated to any ordinary board of directors for any organization. That's what I would simply relate it to say this is as good as a board of directors. But ours is a defense council, so the commander-in-chief is appraised of what goes on within the Malawi Defense Force, as well as within the Ministry of Defense, through, again, the Defense Council, as the ultimate decision-making body of the Ministry of Defense, together with the Malawi Defense Force. And related to that, the question that came, the Secretary for Defense, yes, I can confirm that the Secretary for Defense, again, in accordance with the Defense Force Act, is indeed a member of the Defense Council. And the Secretary for Defense sits in the Defense Council as Secretary of the Defense Council. And myself, as Minister of Defense, I sit in the Council as Chairperson of the Defense Council. The other observations from the Zamayani, we appreciate also your acknowledgement of the work that the Malawi Defense Force did in delivering fertilizers in your constituency, just like we did in other constituencies as well. Thank you very much for that acknowledgement. I think the issue about, I hope I've managed to clarify on the reporting lines between the Minister of Defense, the Commander or the Chief of Defense Force, as well as the Commander-in-Chief. And indeed, I must state, Chair, here that, again, just like any organization, should there be any issues that the Commander-in-Chief would like to find out from the Chief of Defense, again, there is no law or legislation that prevents the Commander-in-Chief to check or reach out to the Chief of Defense Force for any information that he might wish to have. Equally so, just like the President, who is the Commander-in-Chief, there is no legislation that prevents him from reaching out to the Minister of Defense to get or to check any information that he may wish to check with the Minister or indeed with the Chief of the Defense Force. The defense policy, Honourable Member from the Zamayani, yes, defense policy is in draft form. Just like I mentioned that the Act, the Defense Force Act is just 2023, July 2023. So the expectation is from the assent that happened in July 2023 of the Defense Force Act, the next steps are the development of the subsidiary legislation vis-a-vis the Defense Force regulations, and subsequent to that, development of the defense policy. So indeed, the defense policy is in draft form. We are developing it. And the timelines that we're giving ourselves is that before the close of this year, we should have it done, because it's now going through the approval processes. It has to be considered again by the Defense Council before we even escalate it to the Commander-in-Chief. So yes, the defense policy is available in draft form, moving towards completion. I thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson.
Chair, my last submissions. Why I asked that background is that we have the previous presenters had highlighted the former PS for Minister of Defense when he was asked about inventory or knowledge on the status of the Malawi Defense Force assets, in particular, things like aeroplanes and the rest. He said your ministry doesn't keep that inventory, such that as you are here, you might not necessarily know how many main state crafts, like aircrafts, their status and what. I just wanted you to confirm if indeed that your ministry doesn't keep the actual inventory on knowing what is in the Malawi Defense Force, if that's the situation or if it has changed. Thank you, Chair. That's my last submission.
No, Minister, let's exhaust this one.
Honourable Chairperson, without reflecting on what the former PS said, I wouldn't want to answer on his behalf, but answering on my own behalf as Minister of Defense, just like I mentioned with the structures that I mentioned, particularly with reference to the Defense Council, being a structure within which we receive reports of what is happening within the four service units of the Defense Force. I already mentioned that the Defense Council includes the service commanders, Air Force, Army, Navy, as well as the Malawi National Service. Why they are present in the Defense Council, and I mentioned that the Defense Council exists to receive reports from the Chief of Defense Force as well as the Minister of Defense. So this is a structure through which we receive reports. And when we're talking about receiving reports, obviously, we receive reports on how these units are performing. So if we receive reports on how these units are performing, we receive reports on what their asset base is. So if the previous speaker said they don't know, I don't want to reflect on that previous speaker, but this minister, through the structures that we have, we do receive regular reports on the assets, the inventory, and the status in which all these assets are, so that we can make informed decisions on what sort of investments we need to make to ensure that we increase the efficiency, the operational capabilities of the Malawi Defense Force. I thank you very much, Honorable.
Nyasa News.